Hello, everybody. So I am so excited to see you guys again, and I am about to go over all of the questions that we just completed in our problem set. Now, you should have used the app that I introduced yesterday to answer all of those questions. Otherwise, the questions would have been very, very difficult. So number one, use one pattern block to cover half of the rhombus. Identify the pattern block used to cover half of the rhombus. So let me go ahead and annotate this question. The question tells me to use one pattern block, and I need to cover half of the rhombus. It also tells me to identify or figure out which pattern block covers half. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out a rhombus. And I'm going to think to myself, which of these shapes would cover half of this rhombus? Well, in my head, if I cut the rhombus in half right here, I could clearly see that the shape that would cover half of it would have 1, 2, 3 corners. So that leads me to think that it would be a triangle because a triangle has the attribute of 3 corners. So it's either going to be this green triangle or purple triangle. And just based on this rhombus, I think it's the green triangle. And voila, it fits perfectly. So the answer to number one is triangle. A triangle is the pattern block used to cover half of the rhombus. Awesome. So let's go ahead and go to number two. Use one pattern block to cover half the hexagon. Identify the pattern block used to cover half of the hexagon. Well, I'm going to annotate that question. The question tells me to use one pattern block. I need to cover half of a hexagon, and I need to identify or figure out which pattern block covers half of the hexagon. So I'm going to pull up my hexagon, and I'm going to think which of these shapes would cover half of this hexagon. Well, if I imagine in my head that I cut this hexagon in half, the pattern block that would cover half of it would have 1, 2, 3, 4 corners. So that leads me to believe that a quadrilateral would cover half of this hexagon. And out of the 4 different quadrilaterals I have, the one that I think would make the most sense is the trapezoid because a hexagon, the top part of it, almost looks like a trapezoid, and voila, it fits perfectly. Notice that I could also flip this trapezoid this way, and it still covers the bottom half. I could also flip it like this to cover half of that hexagon as well. So the answer to number 2 is trapezoid. The pattern block used to cover half of the hexagon is a trapezoid. Let's go ahead and go to number 3. Use one pattern block to cover 1/3 of the hexagon. Identify the pattern block used to cover 1/3 of the hexagon. Well, my friends, let's go ahead and annotate. I have to use one pattern block to cover 1/3 of the hexagon. And I need to figure out which pattern block covers 1/3 of the hexagon. So let me go ahead and pull out that outline of the hexagon, and I'm going to think to myself, which of these pattern blocks would fit inside of that hexagon 3 times? Well, this is where it's going to get very tricky. Now, we just talked about how a trapezoid could fit inside of the hexagon. However, if I use a trapezoid, I could only fit in 2 equal parts. However, the question tells me that I need 3 equal parts. So I'm going to go ahead and explore with this rhombus because I think one of them can definitely fit inside of a hexagon. So I'm going to just go with that one. And I'm going to pull out another rhombus to see if I can fit it somewhere else. And I think I could fit it in this way. Okay, let me try one more. And a rhombus works because I could fit in 3 rhombuses. However, the question says use 1 pattern block to cover 1/3. I only want to use 1 rhombus to cover 1/3 of the hexagon. So I actually don't need these other 2 rhombuses. I just need 1. Now I have 1 out of 3 total parts. So the answer to number 3 is a rhombus. The pattern block used to cover 1/3 of the hexagon is a rhombus. Now let's go ahead and go to number 4. And by the way, guys, you guys are doing such a fantastic job listening and growing that math brain. So number 4 says use 1 pattern block to cover 1/3 of the trapezoid. Identify the pattern block used to cover 1/3 of the trapezoid. So I'm going to annotate this question. It tells me to use 1 pattern block to cover 1/3 of the trapezoid. Now I need to figure out the pattern block that is used to cover 1/3 of the trapezoid. So I'm going to pull out an outline of a trapezoid, and I need to figure out which of these shapes could fit inside of that trapezoid 3 times. Well, that's pretty tricky, friends. So I'm going to explore, and I'm going to try using this triangle because I feel like it could definitely fit on this edge right here. And I'm going to get another triangle, and I could definitely see that it fits right there. And then, guys, look at that black space right there. I could probably fit this swivel this triangle to fit right in the middle. So I have 3 triangles that fit in the trapezoid. However, I only need to cover 1/3 of it. So I'm going to move 2 of these, and the shape or the pattern block used to cover 1/3 of the trapezoid is a triangle. And last question, we are almost done. Woohoo! Use 1 pattern block to cover 1/6 of the hexagon. Identify the pattern block used to cover 1/6 of the hexagon. Well, the question tells me to use 1 pattern block to cover 1/6 of the hexagon, and I need to figure out the pattern block used to cover 1/6. So let me get the outline of my hexagon. And friends, it says I need to cover 1/6. So I need to figure out the shape that would fit in this hexagon 6 times. I'm going to go ahead and try this triangle and see if it works. So I have 1 triangle here, another triangle here. And remember, the top part is like a trapezoid. So this is kind of similar to the one that we did before. But I'm going to have to cover the bottom as well. I think if I flip this over like this, I could fit that one right there. And if I flip this one over like this, I could fit that one right there. Now, I was able to make 6 equal pieces inside of this hexagon using triangles. So friends, I know that this is my answer. However, it only tells me to cover 1/6. So I'm only going to cover 1/6 of the hexagon. So I need to remove 5 triangles. Now I have 1/6 of the hexagon covered. But the pattern block used to cover 1/6 of the hexagon is a triangle. So I am going to go over the answers one more time. The answer to number 1 is triangle. The answer to number 2 is trapezoid. The answer to number 3 is triangle. Oh, I'm sorry. The answer to number 3 is rhombus. The answer to number 4 is triangle. And the answer to number 5 is triangle. Now, I hope that you guys had fun exploring with enthusiasm. And remember, friends, this is meant to be challenging, and you are meant to explore all the different ways shapes fit into other shapes. That's what's fun about math. There's not just one way, and it's fun figuring out the ways that work and don't work. So I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye!